The Alphabet Zoo is probably one of the strongest Barney episodes so far. This is the 16th episode of the second season, and there is definitely some nostalgia for me, but I love watching Barney to see how educational it is. And this one is very educational. And before I get in with the main part of the episode, I want to share some facts, some of the trivia that's listed on fandom.com, because some of it's quite interesting. And the first is that this is the first appearance of Jason. Jason in the episode was described as being somebody who couldn't hear very well. On fandom.com's trivia page, he's listed as being a deaf character. So I'm not 100% sure if he's deaf or if he just has some hearing difficulties. But either way, I think it's really brilliant to have a character who is potentially deaf, or at least with some severe hearing difficulties, represented in Barney. Because as much as I have a lot of love for the earlier seasons of Barney, that are the ones I grew up with, there's not a lot of inclusivity. Certainly when it comes to representing children with different medical conditions. As I've mentioned before in a couple of discussions, often there'll be a child in a wheelchair, or occasionally there'll be a child in the wheelchair in the opening, but as soon as Barney comes to life, that child suddenly has to go home. And it's a little bit awkward that suddenly they can't work with children who are in wheelchairs. I'm sure it's not actually like that, but that's something that I picked up on, and I imagine young children might pick up on that as well. So it's really great to have Jason in this one. The other children include Shawn, Derek, Tina, and Julie. Apparently this is Tina's last proper episode, which is a shame because she's one of my favourites. We also get Julie's aunt, a character called Molly, played by Mary Ann Brewster, and she was fabulous. She told this story that's an absolute delight about these goats who wouldn't move, and I rather enjoyed it. I was really curious to see how the animals would help in this situation, and I had a lot of fun listening to it. Really good fun, and her performance was really great. The episode is all about animals, and the children are going through every letter of the alphabet to try and find an animal with that letter. And I think this is such a fun game to play at any age, but particularly for children, getting them to think about letters of the alphabet, thinking about animals, and they go through each one, and every now and then they'll come to an animal where there is a song. So I will now go through the songs and talk about those a little bit more. The first two songs don't mean very much to me, and they are Animals in Motion and Down by the Station, but then we have a couple ones that are very nostalgic for me, and that's Sally the Camel, which is an absolute delight, and Kookaburra, which I have very fond memories of. We then have one that I don't really love, and that's My Aunt Came Back. I'm just not a huge fan of it. And then obviously after that we have Julie's Aunt Molly, and then we have the Tiger song, which I didn't really care for. But then we get to the alphabet song, and Jason actually does a little bit of sign language, and he signs a little bit of I love you, by which I mean he signs I love you, and it's so lovely to see. As I said, I don't feel like the early seasons of Barney were very inclusive. I don't know if this changes as the seasons go on. I will look forward to find out, and hopefully they do. But certainly if Barney had been created today, they would be a lot more inclusive. They'd have a greater representation of children, and children with different needs or children with different conditions. But I think Jason is a really great character. I've seen him in future episodes, and certainly I like the character a lot. It's a shame that this is Tina's last proper episode, according to fandom.com, but it is a pretty great episode. A lot of educational opportunities, a really great fun game of trying to work through the alphabet to find animals of every letter. That's something I love doing even now. It's a fun challenge. Not necessarily with animals, but with more difficult things. I think the last time I did that, it was trying to find a type of cheese for every letter of the alphabet. Turns out I don't know that much about cheese, but it's always a fun game. And this episode is really fun, very educational, great bits of songs, lovely story time. It's basically got everything I want from a Barney episode. A lot of nostalgia. Well, a moderate amount of nostalgia, but learning about animals is something that I used to love at school. Whenever we'd have a personal project, I'd often gravitate towards learning about a particular animal, and this episode definitely helps to reignite those memories. A fun episode, very educational, all round pretty decent.